everybody, and welcome back to another episode of Deep Thoughts. And today we are talking all about Vinland Saga Episode 8, Beyond the Edge of the Sea. Before we begin though, I would like to say thank you to those of you who shared last week's video over on Twitter, namely at Decipher14 and at OWitherSoLaden. Thank you both for sharing last week's video, it is super appreciated, my friends, and if you too would like to have your name shouted out in next week's Vinland Saga video, then be sure to share this video around on the internet and then tag me at JoJo Talks Too Much, and I will be sure to shout you out in next week's video. Now then, with that said, we are going to go ahead and get right into it. We're gonna dive in as though you were jumping off the side of a Viking boat into the ocean. Don't know where I'm going with this. Gonna go ahead and just segue out of this and talk about the village. We get to see Askeladd's village in this episode, and it's not what I expected. Honestly, I was sort of surprised at the mere concept of this roving band of Vikings even having a place to call home. And it sort of, honestly, this episode, last week did as well. I just didn't talk about it, and I'm kicking myself because I wish I did. The last few episodes have actually shown these characters as having, like, you assume when you first meet Askeladd and Bjorn and the whole crew that, like, they're all just heartless Vikings and they don't care and they're just out to pillage and destroy. But there is a place to call home. I mean, if you ask Bilbo Baggins, one of the most important things you can have is a place to call home. And these guys have one, and that's sort of surprising, and it really turns everything on its head. And it's not like it's some rundown shack either. It's like it's an actual village with normal villagers living there and friends and likely family. In fact, for sure family, since we meet Askeladd's uncle, who I'm assuming is his actual uncle, but anyway, we'll get to that later. But it's shocking seeing this sort of normal life that they go back to in November to ride out the winter. It's an interesting choice, and even seeing characters like Bjorn actually give a crap about Thorfinn, not as much as as someone who genuinely cares, but he is sort of interested in watching this kid grow, and even Askeladd, in his own weird, twisted way, does actually care about Thorfinn, even though he is clearly using him and manipulating him to stick around because he knows that he can do that. On some level, I think he does find Thorfinn interesting and want to keep him around, and it sort of humanizes them. Even the other Vikings are shown to say, like, oh, Thorfinn looked pretty upset about the whole duel, which, again, we will also get to that later. And I'm pretty sure it's Bjorn even says, like, just leave him. And they all agree, like, yeah, it's his dad's boat, so he probably feels more comfortable there. Whatever, let the kid be. So it's like, what the? Like, you guys, I thought you guys were horrible, but apparently not. They even got a possible new recruit with that kid who is probably gonna die knowing this show, although he did remind me of Jean from Attack on Titan. Maybe he's gonna be this show's Jean. I don't know. Anyway, moving on. I would like to talk briefly about Askeladd's uncle, who is sort of poised to be like the total opposite of Askeladd. They seem to get along because they're family, quote unquote. I don't know if maybe he was just joshing by calling him his uncle, but it seemed like they really were related. And it also seemed as though the two were only friendly because they were related, because Askeladd really isn't anything like his uncle. His uncle is focused on greed and money, and Askeladd certainly likes money. He wants to, have money to support his crew, but it's not something he's actively interested in. And it leads into a really solid quote for the episode, and probably what the whole episode, the theming would be, and that's that everybody is a slave to something. Askeladd's uncle is a slave to money. Askeladd's slave is a slave to Askeladd's uncle. The crew is likely a slave to their village trying to provide for them. And even Thorfinn is a slave to his vengeance. All he wants is to avenge his dad. And it's literally shackled him into being a slave for the guy who killed his dad. It's pretty intense stuff, honestly. I really enjoyed that sort of theming for the episode. I thought it was really well handled as well. And speaking of well handled, we got to talk about two particular scenes because they were phenomenal and in my opinion totally made the episode. The first being the duel between Askeladd and Thorfinn was brilliant because it was all about mind games. Now, normally in this sort of situation, you'd expect Thorfinn to just run, charge in, screaming, and it does lead there, but give it a second, because at the beginning, it's all about the mind games. And in any other show, this would have just been like sword slapping and crazy animation for a little bit, and there's no choreography, but they're just hitting swords, the slapping swords until it's all over. Not here. It's mind games, manipulating the other fighter into doing what you want them to do so that you can then get the victory. Now, this is clever on two fronts. One, it's just clever for being clever, and two, it harkens back to Thor's versus Askeladd, and like you actually get the idea that Thorfinn is growing. He is slowly growing to be the son of the troll, and it's really impressive. And it's also kind of understandable then when Thorfinn loses his shit because Askeladd basically pretends as though he doesn't remember Thor's. I don't know if anybody actually bought that. Like anybody watching is like, did he really forget Thor's? No, I think Askeladd respects Thor's a lot more than he lets on. And the fact that he manipulated Thorfinn into screaming and freaking out, to quote the Joker, it was all a part of the plan. And it went flawlessly. And it was just an impressive little scene. I was really shocked with how well this was handled. So kudos on that front. Also, speaking of Thor's, the Thor's scene. I was not expecting to see Thor's again for a while. Like, I thought if we ever saw Thor's again, it wouldn't be till way later when we meet up with the other, the Jom Vikings. Sorry, I'm awful with pronunciation. I'm sure some of you are rolling your eyes. But with the Vikings who used to roll with Thor's, I'd assume that once we met up with them, and then maybe we'd get like a little mini flashback arc, maybe like an episode or two with Thor's again. But I didn't expect to see him this soon. And it was handled really well in as much as that we see that Thorfinn still is a slave to his vengeance. He still, and at the same time, he still needs Thor's. He needs his dad. And it sort of broke my heart seeing that, especially seeing that he still sees himself as he was then. At least that's what I interpreted from this scene, as this scene is pretty much heavy on symbolism. And I do think that Thorfinn still sees himself as that defenseless kid who got his dad killed. I don't think he's ever really going to move past that, at least not in this first season for as long as, I don't know how many episodes they have, but I don't think we'll see Thorfinn really get over that. That's some severe emotional trauma, and it was handled really well here. And just seeing Thor's comforting his son and telling, like, not even really being sure what it is he needs to hear, especially how far Thorfinn has fallen off the path that his father wanted for him. It's heavy stuff, man. It's full on. It's really heavy. And you don't even get a break from that, because immediately following that, we get the scene between Thorfinn and that slave girl whose name is escaping me. And you really get the sense that these two are kindred spirits, like, and that they see a lot of each other in, or at least she sees a lot of herself in Thorfinn, even if Thorfinn won't admit that he does see quite a bit of himself in her as well. And the idea that it all kind of comes back to Vinland again, when the girl says, like, I just want to run away, I just want to get out of here, and she, like, but no matter where I go, it doesn't matter because I don't know what's beyond the sea. And Thorfinn's quiet for a second and then says, what's beyond the sea is Vinland. And I was like, that's such a good callback, such a good line. I appreciate it. And it does make sense, actually, given the context, since I believe this would only be like either, like, this would be following the first chapter, so of course they're gonna bring Vinland up again. Friggin' good stuff, good episode. We even end on that little, like, London battle. I'm really excited. The idea that we get to see this sort of, like, old school London, we get to see the Vikings going off, we get to see a full out battle, and that blonde dude whose name is escaping me right now, but I am friggin' pumped for next week. I was really impressed with this week's episode. It was much better than I thought last week's was. I thought last week's was pretty solid, but this was like way better. I was really impressed. So with that said, everybody, that's gonna wrap up most of my thoughts, although I do have to say something, and if you watch my videos consistently, sorry, you're gonna be hearing this all week as I sort of transition us out of the old rating system, which used to be a more academic sort of system, like B-, A+, stuff like that. we're going to be transitioning into a more sort of traditional ranking system a la a fighting game or Devil May Cry. And I've linked it in the description. It is sort of ranked from like an S rank being the tippity top to a D rank being the total bottom. With that said though, I'm gonna go ahead and give this episode an A. I'm gonna give it a rank of A. I was really impressed with this week. It really sort of blew my hair back. So I thought it was really friggin' awesome. So yeah, it gets an A. But hey, before we wrap up today's video, as always, I have to give a big shout out to the good folks over on Patreon, namely those in the Earl Grey tier. Calvin Atkinson, Crowbar of Irony, Dominic, Urza, No For Nothing, Maria Teresa, Mirth Mouser, Nye, Omner Garamond, Opinionated Slime, Cell, Shadow Creative, Sipco Games, Somastan, Tristan, and Verdon. Thank you all so much for your continued support, and if you too would like to join the T Squadron, then by all means go ahead and check out the first link in the description to check out our Patreon page, see all the cool rewards you can get over there, as well as access to our Patreon exclusive Discord. But with that said, that is going to be a video, everybody, so I hope you enjoyed today's video, and if you did, you've probably been on the internet long enough to know what to do already, so I ain't going to tell you, but I will say that it is appreciated, and if you're feeling stressed out today, you go have yourself a warm cup of tea, and I'll talk to you all again real soon.